It's great to have Emma from DGrade on this optimism and sustainability series. DGrade is a super cool company that takes plastic and turns it into clothes. And with that, I want to just first off to thank Emma for taking the time to join us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So maybe Emma, just maybe to start us off, what's the story behind DGrade, which by the way is a really cool name? How did the idea come about to turn plastic into clothing?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, I have to say. So I'm really glad you like the name. We do have kind of mixed feedback on that. And it was funny because it was a long time ago. We were really thinking about setting up the company and doing something sustainable. My husband actually he has 30 odd years in conventional manufacturing. And he'd always been interested in sustainable issues. And he was, back in the day, was a bit of a surfer, and he was one of the Surfers Against Sewage and all those kind of things. And at the time, and we're talking probably 15, 20 years ago, a lot of the things around sustainability, and which wasn't a word then, by the way, it was green, and you know, there was very little interest in this, but everything that was to do with that was very much around soft and fluffy cotton, sort of those sort of recycled cotton, those sort of things. And we felt that if we were going to do something, let's do a little bit differently, and let's try and do something a bit more urban, a bit more cool, and a bit more, rather than sort of like aimed at it's a bit of a stereotype, but the sort of the older, hippie, back to nature kind of person. We wanted a more young, youthful, cool person that would be more into sustainability. So rather than thinking about everybody who gets A grades, or, you know, like, we want the cool guys. So we kind of came up with DGrade as a sort of it's not really a reflection of the quality of our product, but, you know, we're not mainstream. So we on the back of that, Chris, with all his years experience, he decided when we came to Dubai in 2010 to set up DGrade and only focus on recycled fabrics. And it kind of all started from there.
And so, you know, when you say turning plastic bottles into clothes, I've seen the YouTube videos, but it's not immediately clear what the step-by-step process is. So maybe for those that aren't used to it, can you walk us through how you turn plastic bottles into clothes?
Yes, I can. It sounds like an easy process. It isn't, but I'm going to make it really simple. So it all starts with the collection of a post-consumer plastic bottle. We mostly use bottles. We can transfer any PET plastic, which, when you look at the little triangle, it's the one with the number 1 inside. And the reason we use the PET plastic is because it contains polyester. So we can repurpose that. So how do we do it? The bottle is taken to a factory where it's basically washed and crushed into small plastic particles. That sounds like an easy process, but it isn't. That's also quite a lot of staging in that. But anyway, once we have the plastic flakes, they get heated and melted, and they get extruded through what looks like a big shower head. You can imagine the plastic coming through in lots of little sort of wiggly plastic streams. And once you have those plastic streams, they're heated and they're fluffed up, and they turn into a hollow fiber or a long staple fiber. And that can be used at that stage for lots of different purposes. It can be used for stuffings for pillows or for furniture, those kind of things. But we take it another step further. We spin that fiber and we turn it into yarn. And our yarn has a name. It's been trademarked. It's called green spun. And the reason that we trademarked the name was because people, they may not know it, but they do know about yarn. So they may look for something like Lycra, or they may look like something for Gore-Tex. They're just trademark yarns that stand for high quality. And we wanted green spun to stand for high quality recycled yarn. So we go from flaking the bottle to extruding the fiber to spinning the yarn. Once we have the yarn, we can weave it or knit it into hundreds of different kinds of fabrics. We can also blend it, so it could be like a cotton poly, or it could be cotton lycra, cotton spandex, or it could be treated, so it could be antibacterial, or it could be fire retardant, something like that. So there's lots of different ways we can use the yarn.
Yeah, I had never really thought that the one on the plastic bottle actually meant that you could turn that into a fabric. And I imagine there's been lots of learnings. So one question that I thought about was, So you come to Dubai, you set up this plastic bottle to yarn company. How do you get your bottles?
That's a very good question, and it's not easy. So there are around about 10 million bottles being made every day in the UAE. That's roughly 4 billion bottles a year. It's a lot. So you'd think it would be super easy to get them, right? And it's not just plastic bottles. We can take anything that's PET. So it could be egg trays or salad jars or you name it, lots of different things. In fact, I had a USB stick delivered from Amazon yesterday. It was in PET plastic, which we can recycle. So you think, oh gosh, there's all this PET. It's with all these different products. How do we get it? But, you know, people are cynical. They don't believe that recycling is happening here, so why should I bother to put it in the right bin? And also there is a little bit of laziness here in this region. You know, people don't necessarily take out their own trash, or they can't be bothered to walk to the bin to put it in. So we find the whole segregation at the source is really one of the key problems, because once the plastic is in the regular trash, it's quite difficult for us to get our hands on it. So we set up our Simply Bottles education program, which we run with schools, but we also run with businesses, and we do events where we front face to the public. And we try and educate people about how important it is to keep your recyclables separate so that the waste management companies can sort it, and then they can sell the plastic back to the recycling factory where we can recycle it. So yeah, we do it. We collect through our Simply Bottles program, but also by working with the waste management companies and all those collectors who are really collecting plastic on the ground.
Yeah, I think when trying to get people to change their behavior, you know, all around the world, trying to buy into that is a new step change. And I think how you're able to link it to business and get schools and folks to buy in, I think is really cool. So now you've got your supply, you've got people saying, you know, I'm willing to, you know, collect and send or partner with you. How much yarn does your facility kind of produce on a yearly basis or monthly basis?
So we work with a number of different factories to make the yarn. So we can make you know, huge quantities. I mean, we can supply big contracts, which we do. But the factory in Abu Dhabi is recycling roughly 1 billion bottles a year, which is around about 25% of the UAE output. So it's a pretty significant amount of plastic that is being recycled here in the UAE. One t-shirt takes roughly somewhere between 15 and 20 bottles. Of course, it depends on the style of the t-shirt and the size of the bottle. But, you know, 1 ton of plastic is 50,000 bottles. So you need a lot of plastic, but we can make a lot of product.
Yeah, and looking at your website, I could see all the kind of different things that you can create from the facility. And I think in my mind, there's the technical. So you've got the machine, you've got the supply, you've got it all coming in. Was it really hard to convince people to buy plastic clothing? Was that something that was easy, or was that a challenge?
Yeah, it's not really plastic clothing; it's polyester, and that is a really important sort of distinction to make, because what we're selling is high quality polyester clothing, which you can buy in any high street outlet. Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, all the big sports brands. You know, you go into their outlets, their stores and their online outlets, and, you know, pretty much everything you're buying is recycled polyester. So, you know, people are doing it. I think what we're doing that's different is that we're predominantly and mainly B2B. So we're not trying to create more product, excess fashion product in the world, because there's so much fashion, you know, garments and you know, 90 million tons of garments go to landfill every year. So we really made it very a clear decision early in the day to say we're going to supply companies that already have a uniform requirement and just get them to replace a conventional manufacturing of uniforms to a sustainable manufacturing of uniforms. So if a company has, you know, workers that need uniforms, whether it be front of house, back of house, delivery, warehouse, whatever it may be, and they're already using uniforms, why not make them sustainably? And, you know, there's a lot of great impacts that when you turn plastic into polyester. But it's safe to wear. PET is an extremely safe product for food consumption. There's no health authority in the world that has banned PET. It doesn't contain any BPAs, which is some plastics do contain that, which may be detrimental to health. PET doesn't. It doesn't affect the skin in any way. We can make it wearable and breathable, with wicking and all those special ways of making the fabric so that it's really comfortable to wear. And it's high quality, it's high performance. So yeah, it's not always easy to convince people. But once they see the actual garments, they're pretty bowled over.
Yeah, I'm sure once you get that T-shirt and you see it, it's a lot easier to digest than anything else. And so I guess one question that I also had was, why the UAE? Why set up a facility here?
That's also, an interesting question, because when we came to Dubai in 2010, the country was not quite what it is today in terms of the size and how many people were here, and also, governmental support. So the government is very keen to push the made in UAE manufacturing side, and that's been great. And we've also been on the crest of the wave with people getting more and more aware of the impact of plastic pollution. And I think it was a very good time to come. I have been working in the fashion industry for my whole career, which is, I loved it, and I'm not trying to say anything against the fashion industry, but hand on heart, it is a polluting industry, and when you really look at the stats, it makes it easy to make the decision to just try and do something that's more sustainable. So I was in a region working in the fashion industry, seeing the amount of plastic pollution that was here, seeing how little recycling and segregation there was, and it made sense. All things came together. It made sense to do it here.
Yeah, I think having that full life cycle is actually a really cool win-win story. And I think, I hadn't really known that there was a supply chain that took plastic bottles into clothing. What other sectors do you think do a really good job of recycling materials that have, from one product to another?
Well, we work across a lot of different sectors. So the flake that we make in the factory in Abu Dhabi actually goes back into the food packaging industry. So we can actually make new food packaging from that plastic as well. So that's really great. And we also work with BIC, and we recycle pens and markers through our schools program. Last school year, we collected 7,000 kilos, which was nearly 80,000 pens and markers. And we can turn those into plastic furniture. So those pens and markers are not PET plastic. They're a different kind, but they can be made back into new plastic items. So ecoplastics are doing a really great job of making plastic furniture and products out of different kinds of plastic. But there's also a whole part of the construction industry that's really turning its attention to recycling trash, and plastic is part of that, to make roads and curbsides, and when they're making sustainable cities, really thinking about the product that they're using and making sure that they're using a lot of recycled elements. And that could be things like, of course, focusing on solar and reusing water and catching, the rainwater, and making sure that they've got all those things in place to make it sustainable. And then it's also making sure that the residents have access to proper trash segregation and then proper waste management. So there's so many great initiatives. I'm part of the Gold Sustainability Awards. I was a judge just last week, and the initiatives that are happening here in this region are exciting, creative, and pretty mind-blowing. So there's loads going on.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot happening, and you're seeing more and more taking place. I think just to maybe end, the one question that I had was, what keeps you optimistic when it comes to the future of clothing and sustainability, or the plastic industry?
Well, in terms of fashion, I think that the public is becoming more aware about how detrimental an environmental impact the fashion industry does have. Toxic dyes going into rivers, lack of wages for the people that are actually making the garments, and ultra fast fashion has a big role to play in that. And I think that there is a slight shift away from that. In fact, in France, they're taxing ultra fast fashion shipments so that people have to now pay more. And I think that's probably what governments will start to do more around the world when they see that France is leading the way. And, you know, I do think that young people, they have a moral conscience. They are maybe looking to do more thrifting, more clothes swaps, and, you know, being on trend and being that wearing the latest fashion isn't maybe as important as it could have been in my day. So the future is with the younger guys coming through. I feel that they, you know, they have so many great ideas, so much creativity. We see it through Simply Bottled Schools. You know, we run all these different challenges and competitions. It's totally free for the schools. And the kids, they get behind it, the energy and the passion, and, you know, we're surprised just some of the amazing ideas they've got. So the hope is with the future, as it always has been. And, you know, I see a huge amount of positivity. I've just mentioned, you know, some of the awards that we're involved with, and you know, they're shining a spotlight on these incredible innovations and initiatives that companies, as well as individuals, are doing. And so many companies do have sustainable pillars. They have the UN sustainability goals that they, you know, they're aligned with, and they have ESG. They're trying to really make sure that their corporate governance is you know, doing the right thing, and it's not all greenwashing. There's some proper initiatives out there, so I feel really positive.
Amazing. No, I think that's really nice to kind of hear of a live case study that has full circularity. And really just want to thank you again for taking the time to kind of share DGrade's insights, your insights, and share some cool facts around real projects here in the UAE.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the program.
Thank you.